Okay, so why don't you start by telling us your name?
My name?
Mm-hmm.
My name is Raymond Weigand.
Um, uh, what was your reason for joining the military? And were you drafted or were you enlisted?
Why I joined the Navy?
Yeah.
Because the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and I joined the Navy to help beat the Germans, beat the Japs and the Germans.
What made you pick the Navy over one of the other branches?
Well, I tried to get in the Marines, and I flunked out. I come home, 2 days later, got my teeth shaped up and went down and joined the Navy on July the 6th, 42. I passed. They told me to call home and get a toothbrush. You're shipping out tonight. And I called my mother and dad, come down, and I shipped out from Pennsylvania Station. It's where Station Square is now in Pittsburgh. That used to be a Pennsylvania Railroad station. I shipped out from there, and I went to Connecticut Naval Base for training.
What did you think about the Japanese at the beginning of the war? What were your thoughts about them? You can be honest.
I hated them at first, and then afterwards I didn't think much about it. When they bombed Hiroshima and the other place with that atomic bomb, I felt sorry for the people because they'd really wiped out a lot of people, you know. But it shortened the war, and they said it probably saved over 1 million lives by doing that. But I had no ill feelings about them, really, after the war.
Okay. Did the men fighting in the Pacific think often about the war going on in Europe, or was it just something that you were aware of in the back of your mind?
I didn't understand it.
Like, day to day, did you think about, you wonder what's going on in Europe, or were you focusing on in the Pacific?
Well, I'll tell you what, when my mother and dad, I left my mother and dad down the station, and as I was walking away, I looked back and I said, I'll be back. But then when I got on the train, I figured, how the hell do I know I'm going to come back? I never saw the ocean, and I didn't know what I was getting into, you know. But I said that for them not to worry, you know. But like I said, I never saw the ocean, and I didn't know what I was getting into, but I joined. And anyway, go back to when I joined, my cousin and a buddy of ours named Kilroy, the three of us went down and joined the Marines. My cousin passed the Marines, and he wasn't supposed to ship out till July the 16th. So Kilroy and I come back to McKeesport and got our teeth fixed and went down July the 6th. I passed and Kilroy flunked, and I shipped out. But later on, maybe 6 months, 8 months, I got a letter from Kilroy. He was in the Air Force, and we used to correspond. And I one letter come back from him, and on the envelope it says missing in action. And I still have that envelope, and I never opened it. And people say, why didn't you open it? I said, I wrote the letter, and I don't want to open it up. I just, I don't know why, you know. It's just that feeling, you know. This Jarrett that interviewed me, I was walking in a hallway when we went down in April, and he says, hey, Mr. Weigand. And I turned around, I didn't recognize him. He says, I talked to you last year, remember? I said, oh yeah, you was in the 6th Division. I said, yeah, I was in the 6th Division. Yeah, I talked to you. He says, can I interview you? I said, yeah. So we went up in his room and Johnny stayed down and he interviewed me, and his tape, he kept, it would break or something, you know, and Johnny come up about an hour later after he interviewed me, and Johnny come up and he took a picture of Johnny and I, and he said he'd send me the tape and the pictures. And before that, a guy that I met is the business manager of the whole ship, Owens. We talked, and he told me about somebody wrote a book about during a battle, the Japs were attacking us, and I was in Mont 2, that's on the starboard side, and we were tracking a plane, and they come around and they went aft. It's 180 degrees, and the starboard side picked them up, and they shot, but Mount 5 shot into Mount 9, right in the back. And there was a few guys killed and a lot hurt, you know. But actually, when them guns are 180, that's the stern, or if they're 360, automatically they shouldn't fire. But they did fire. And a couple days later, as a gunner's mate, we had in between the guns is a fuse setter and sight setter. There was something on the floor that we had to cover up. They think that's what happened by that gun firing, you know.
When you first went into the Navy, did you serve on any other ships before you got on Alabama?
When I first got in, I had basic training, and it was fast. We only, usually when you go to basic training, it takes 3 to 4 months, you know, but the Navy was building a lot of new ships, and they needed men to man them, and they sent us through fast, and I was there a month, then I got shipped down to Norfolk where the Alabama was, and I got on the Alabama, and it was just commissioned, the day it was commissioned, and I'm a plank owner. When you're on a ship, when you're on board a ship when it's commissioned, you can get a plank owner, and I got a piece of plank about that big, you know, that I have in there. And I stayed on a ship a couple of days, and a group of us went ashore. Then I went back to the ship and got on was put in 6th Division. That's 5-inch 38 guns. And I became a right shellman. I would put the shell in and ram it, and it would go off, you know. But at first, my duty aboard ship was captain of the head. Now the head's the toilet, the restroom, you know. And it was the officer's head. And I was in charge. I had 2 other guys under me, because I was 20 years old then, and these other guys were 17, 18, 19. So the chief bosun mate put me in charge, captain of the head, and that was our duty. After breakfast, you'd hear a whistle, sweepers man your brooms. That meant everybody go to work where they're supposed to go to work. So we'd go up, the officer would be gone, we'd clean up, replenish toilet paper, whatever, and that was what we did. And in the afternoon, we go up there and do the same thing, you know. And every Friday was inspection. The officer would come and inspect everybody, you know, all stations. They'd inspect our heads, so Friday we really cleaned up, you know, because there was pipes running through. And you could get dusty, and they would have white gloves on, and they'd go around, you know. So we had. Friday was field day. That meant clean everything, you know, not just. But then, after about 3 months, each division had to send a couple sailors down to the galley to do help down the galley, like clean up and all that stuff, and they'd stay down there 3 months. Well, Chief Bosun made a 6th Division. We had 6th Division. We had 3 mounts, 2, 4, and 6 on the port side, and we had about 100 men in our division. And the chief bosun mate said, "You're going down." And the gunner's mate that was in Mount 2, he said, No, you're not going down. You're not sending him down. He's coming here. He's going to be a gun striker. Gun striker means you're learning your apprentice to be a gunner's mate, you know. So I stayed. I didn't have to go down there, you know. So that was good. I didn't want to go down there anyhow, you know. But then I became a gunner's mate, and I went up in rank. I made 3rd class, and I made 2nd class, and that's what I come out as. Like I say, the Navy was promoting everybody fast. Like when I went aboard ship, I was apprentice seaman. I made seaman 2nd class, and then seaman 1st class. And then you go up for your rank, whatever you're in, like if you're a gunner's mate or a yeoman or a quartermaster or a bosun mate. From seaman 1st, that's what you go. You become a petty officer. And I worked up. Everything you have to learn something new, and then you take tests, you know. Okay.
Were you happy to get stationed on a battleship? Or
yeah, when the war was over, I was really glad, because battleship is really one of the safest things to be, you know, because we got a lot of firepower. Now, on a battleship, let me tell you what's on a battleship. You have 9 16-inch guns. Them bullets are projectors. They're about 6 foot tall, and they weigh about 2,000 pounds, and they shoot 20 miles. We had 9 of them, 6 forward and 3 aft. And the 5-inch 38 mount guns, 5-inch 38 twin mounts, we had 5 on each side. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 on the port side, and 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 on the starboard side. And 40 millimeters, that was 4 of those like pontoon, you know. We had, I think it was 8 of them on there, and 20 millimeters were 3-man gun. They were shells in a case, and one man would be strapped in the gun, one would be loading, there'd be one passing ammunition. We had about 50 of them aboard. So in peacetime, a battleship usually carries about, I think, 2,800 men. But during the war, we was carrying about 3,300 because they put more guns on and stuff like that. And aboard battleship, we had 3 airplanes. They were seaplanes. They were called Kingfishers. And we had 2...
Catapults?
Yeah, 2 catapults on there. One Kingfisher on each one, and then there was one on the deck, you know. And they used them for observation and towing. When we would have target practice, we'd shoot at a sleeve, they'd be towing. And it's really something that you never seen. When they come back, when the seaplane lands, the ship will make a big turn, and the sea will be real calm, and he'd pull into that thing part and pull alongside the ship, and there was like I think they called it a sled, that he'd put that pontoon right on that sled. Then there was a crane aft. The crane would come down, pick it up, and put it right aboard ship. It's something to see. I mean, you know.
When did you ship out from Norfolk going to the Pacific?
Well, when I went aboard the Alabama, it was a brand new ship. Now, when a ship's built, like the Alabama, it takes them like 3 years to build. And then after it's built, it's commissioned. And that's when it's commissioned, that means it's in the Navy, you know. And it has to get outfitted by guns and that. And it was all outfitted when I went on, but you have they call a shakedown cruise. You go out one day in the Chesapeake Bay and maybe fire the 16-inch, and maybe one day the 5-inch and 40-inch, and then they'd check things about the ship, how fast it could go. You know, I think top speed was 25 knots. A knot is a mile and an eighth or a mile. They'd check everything, you know, and it took about, I imagine, 2 months. So we left Norfolk, we went to Newfoundland, then we went to Iceland, then we went over to the British Isles, and we operate with a British-owned fleet. And we was way in the northern part of the British Isles is a big base. They got a big harbor, and that's Scapa Flow was the name of it. And that's where the Navy stayed, the British Navy, and we stayed there with them. And they're with us, it was just our battleship, and I think there was a cruiser, and there was a bunch of destroyers in our task force, you know. You had to have the destroyers because they could detect submarines. So we operated with them, and one of our operations was we went across the Arctic Circle, and they were relieving the troops on an island called Spitzenberg. But the main object was to lure a German battleship that was up there, lure them out, because they had 18-inch guns, and our battleship have 16, but the British ship have 14-inch. That's their biggest, 14. But that I forget the name of that battleship. It was
the
bigger.
German one?
Pardon me?
The German one? Tirpitz.
That might have been it. Yeah, that might have been it. I can never remember that name. But it wouldn't come out. So then we'd go back to Scapa Flow. And July the 4th, it was daylight all the time up there, 24 hours. July the 4th, you'd come up. You had to call everybody up because all the ships had American flags on. Even the British ships had all American flags because it was the 4th of July. That was when we separated from England, you know. Okay, then we come back to Norfolk. I had to leave. I come home for a week. I had to leave. And then when I went back, we pulled out of Norfolk. We went through the Panama Canal. Now the Panama Canal is 108 foot wide, and our ship was 108 feet wide. And when it went through the locks, it would scrape, you know. But once you went through the lock on the American side, you go through the waterways, you know, and it's like a river. But you go through there, and then you go through the locks to come on the other side, the Panama and the Pacific, you know. But years when they built American ships, they were built to go through the Panama Canal and go underneath the San Francisco Bridge, you know. Instead of, they have all kind of stuff high, you know. Instead of taking that down, they built them to go through, and that's how they did it, you know. If a ship was built 115 wide. It couldn't go through there. It'd have to go all the way around, you know. But that's how the ships were built, you know. But then we went out in Pacific, and we was on our way to Pearl Harbor, and they got a message for us to join another task force, and they were some island, I don't know, and then we'd come back to Pearl maybe, or as we kept moving closer to Japan, we would get an island that had big harbors, and that's where we'd come back to, you know. In the battleship, we earned 9 stars. That was 9 different engagements in the Pacific, you know. We bombarded islands. And all during the war, we shot down 23 planes, I think. You know, the Alabama got credit for shooting 21 planes down. And that's the way it was. A lot of islands, they bypassed. There were no... But here's a story I'll tell you about. We bombarded an island called Nauru. It was no military value at all. And I don't think there was even Japanese troops there. But they were getting raw materials. The Japs were getting raw materials from that island, and we wanted to destroy it, you know. So when you go out, you're in a task force, you know, you got the battleships, your carriers, and your cruisers, and your thing. And our task force consists of 4 American battleships. I know there was a South Dakota and the Alabama, and I forget the other 2. And there was 2 British battleships. Now the British ships have 14-inch guns. We had 16. So the first salvo that went to the island was 54 guns, 16 and 14-inch. They were loaded, and an admiral pulled a pistol trigger, and they all shot at one time, you know, to that island. And then they shot a few rounds after that. Every ship had its section which to shoot at, you know. And then the ships moved closer, and we shot the 5-inch shot too, you know. But then we pulled out, but that's all we were supposed to do, you know. And we went all the way to Tokyo. After the war, when the war was declared over, I think it was 2 weeks or a week or 2 weeks after that, we were anchored in Tokyo Bay. Yeah. And they sent men ashore. I don't know what they did. It was some gunner's mate and officers. They went ashore. I didn't get to go ashore. I stayed aboard. But a buddy of mine, he brought me a Japanese flag. I said, "What'd you do with it?" They said, "We didn't do nothing. We just patrolled the streets and that, you know." And I told him I had a hell of a duty than you. I said, "Let me tell you. Each ship was supposed to send a crew on a LST, that's landing craft. And it was an officer, 4 gunner's mates, the boat crew, a signalman, and a corpsman. And we were supposed to go out there and patrol between the shore and the ships in case some die-hard Japs would come and throw a grenade or something to the ship. So I went to the armory to get a gun. I was the last one up, and I ended with a Thompson submachine gun. Now, I never fired a Thompson submachine gun, but when I went up for second class, I had to know about the Thompson. I had to take it apart, put it together again, and fire it. Well, I did all that. I could take it apart and put it back together and everything. So the guy who was teaching us said we were going to shoot aft the next day, the Thompson. We're going to shoot it in the air to complete our thing. So we went aft to shoot the Thompson submachine gun, and general quarters went. So we ought to run but our gun stations, and we never did fire it. He says, I will let it go at that. So here I was. I got the Thompson, and we went out, and it was a nice day, nice evening. I think we was on a 4 to 8 watch. I think that's what it was. But it was real nice. We were just laying there, looking around, doing nothing. All of a sudden, the storm come up, and then that landing craft would go up and come down, and the water would come up. I told my buddy he had a rifle, .3 I think I call it, forget now. But he had a rifle, and he was holding it. I had that Thompson, and I had ammunition. And I says, the hell with this Thompson, this ammunition. I put it down, I put my vest on. I says, I ain't dying in goddamn Tokyo Bay, Anyway, we weathered through that, and we pulled up alongside a cruiser. And we pulled alongside the gangway, and the officer, permission to come aboard, sir? The officer deck on the cruiser says, permission denied. He says, can you tell me where the BB-60 is? That's the Alabama's number, BB-60. No, we don't know where it's at. Okay, so we finally found it, and we come aboard. Went aft, and we went board ship. I was glad of that. But that was funny. I thought I was going to lose my life in Tokyo Bay. But we stayed there. I don't know, a week or so. And we went to Okinawa. Now that's where your grandpap was. We pulled in Okinawa, and they took off a lot of stuff like fall weather gear and that, and took it ashore. And we took on about 800 passengers, guys going on leave, guys getting discharged, guys getting transferred, and we was going to take them back to Pearl Harbor. Well, a buddy of mine, where our mount was up above was the signal bridge, and the guy from McKeesport was a signalman. And he hollered down, hey, Weigand, your brother just signaled over. He wants to see you ashore. Nobody was allowed to go ashore, so I couldn't see him. But he was on Okinawa. Well, then we went to Pearl Harbor and dropped off all the passengers. Then we went to San Francisco. That's where that picture was taken. We was going into San Francisco. And we marched in the parade. Then I had enough points to get out. The point system was your age and your sea duty and your time in the Navy. And that's how you got out, And I had enough points to get out. So I left the ship and went on what they called Treasure Island. I had a muster in the morning, and then you could do what you want. You can stay there, or you can go ashore, go out. Now me and 2 other guys, we'd go out every day, because we were waiting for a train to take us. We was going to Sampson, New York to get discharged. So every day we'd go out, we didn't have enough money. We'd go to an all-night movie and sleep in an all-night movie, Maybe meet some girls there too. Anyway, this one day, about 3 days before I shipped out, me and my 2 buddies, we're standing in a storefront there, and here comes 3 Marines up the street. I said, holy hell, that's my brother Poison. I said, we're going to jump these guys. So they come up and we jump them. We're going to beat the shit out of you guys. Poison. I said, you got any money? He said, no, you. I said, hell no. I said, let's wire home for $100 and we'll get drunk. So we wired home for $100, and the 6 of us, we just palled around for almost 2 days. We went aboard ship. We ate supper there one day. I got permission to eat supper there. Then they had to go back to San Diego, and I had to go get my train to come home, But that was something that I missed in Okinawa, and I see him in Treasure Island, But I got discharged in Sampson, New York, one thing I remember about Sampson, New York was in a Quonset hut after we went. You go through, you get examined again and all kind of stuff to get, and you get a eagle for your put on your uniform as a discharge. And we was in this Quonset hut, and a preacher, well, not a preacher, he was a preacher, but in the Navy you called him a
Chaplain?
chaplain. Yeah. He was making a speech about when we went home. He said, "Boys, I remember you. What you should remember is to forget them 4-letter words that you've been using in the Navy when you get home." Well, we understood that, but that's what I remember up there. And I also remember we was going to come home on a bus, but they were on strike, and we couldn't get home. So a couple guys went down, and we hired a bus, and we got enough guys to pay for a bus, that we hired a bus that brought us back to Pittsburgh, you know. Okay, you want to know some more stuff about the sea?
Sure.
Well, we was in 2 typhoons. Okay?
Yeah. How did that go? The
Typhoon.
Yeah, Typhoon Cobra in December 1944, the bad one.
We was in 2 typhoons. The second one was the worst one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, they tell me now, this is what they said, they were doing only 1 knot. That's a mile and an eighth, just to keep the ship moving. Now, that typhoon, when the ship would go up and come down, it's called the pitch. When it would get down, the ship would shudder all the way back to the stern, you know. Then it would roll over like this, then roll back over, you know. Well, me and my crew was on watch, Mount 2. Mount 2 is one structure above the main deck, and we was on watch. And you're all in a mind, you know there's a storm up here, you know. And they called down, I was the mount captain there, and they called down to relieve the watch. And I said, "Why?" He says, "Your gun barrels are dipped in the water when it's rolling." But when that ship rolled, them was in the water, so you know how bad it was. So the signalman above it, I knew, he was from McKeesport, I can't recall his name now. But he says, "Hey, Weigand," in the Navy they called you by your last name all the time. "Hey, Weigand, come on up here." "Why?" "The Pittsburgh going to lose its bow." Pittsburgh was a cruiser. I think it was a light cruiser. So I went up the signal bridge, and right off the port bow, they lost their bow. But they kept going. The ship kept going. They knew that they were going to lose a bow. So they called on the ship watertight integrity. Even when we go to general quarters, every hatch below deck is closed. That's watertight integrity. Because if one section gets, say, a torpedo, it'll just do that section, and there won't be no water going in the rest of the ship, you know. So they knew they were going to lose a bow, and they had watertight. They had all the hatches closed, and the bow went one way, and the ship went the other way. And the destroyers, after the storm, helped them back to Pearl Harbor. Well, they put a new bow on it, and the ship went on its way. That was a hell of a typhoon.
Did any of the other destroyers in your task force sink? Because I know some of them sunk during that typhoon.
We lost 3 destroyers in that storm. A destroyer, like our ship, they call draw about 27 feet. That meant that the ship was in the water 27 feet, you know. But a destroyer is only maybe 10 or some feet in the water, because they detect submarines. They have equipment that they detect submarines, and we lost 3 of them in that typhoon. And all was lost, you know. I mean, nobody could you know, nobody could save him because it was so bad, you know. So
What was life like aboard the Alabama? Just daily life.
life, like on the Alabama,
Yeah.
it was almost like home.
Mhm.
You had your duties in an aboard ship. They were in 3 sections, like A, B, and C. And we had little buttons, and like A would be a circle, B would be a triangle, and C would be a square. Section 1, 2, and 3. Now, when you're aboard ship, you go on watch 4 hours, and you're off 8. So when your section 1's on, section 2 and 3 are off, and then section 2 goes, 1 and 3's off. But that's the way it worked, and that's the way it worked in a chow line. Like section 1's on watch, and section 2 is about to go on watch. They eat first. We had 3 chow lines, one on the port side, one on the starboard side, and one aft, come into the dining place. And there used to be a petty officer watching before you got in. And you had a button. Now, if 2 was a circle, that's the only ones allowed in first, you know. If you try to sneak in with a triangle, they go back to the line. But all the sections going on duty would eat first, and then after that, the other section and the section coming on, they'd eat last, you know. And that's the way it went all the time for lunch, you know, for breakfast, dinner, and lunch, you know.
Okay, I got like about halfway done with questions. Next one was, when you were in the Pacific, you were docked at an island and the men were allowed to go on shore. Did a lot of men go out and pursue women?
Oh, yeah, well, we're not in the Pacific. There wasn't, a lot of times we'd come back, not a lot of times, a few times we'd come back to Pearl Harbor, we'd get liberty, you know. But most of the guys would look for women and drink, you know. But then like I said, this island, Ulithi, had a big harbor, and when you'd go out on a mission, it was called a task force, you know, Task Force 58, Task Force 38, and you'd have a group, like in the center would be the aircraft carriers with the planes. Now, it became a plane war, actually. Then you'd have the battleships on each side. Our duty was to protect the aircraft carriers. Then you might have some cruisers. We had light cruisers and heavy cruisers. And then you'd have your destroyers on the outside. And maybe in each group would be a dozen ships or more, you know, maybe up to 15. You never knew, you know. But like, say if we went to bombard an island, the carriers would stay back and we'd go in close, you know. Our 16-inch could shoot 20 miles, so we'd go maybe 20 or less and bombard, you know. And then we'd pull back, and then maybe the airplanes would go in and bomb, you know. But whatever, I don't know, you know. I was in Mount too. Somebody asked me one time down in Alabama, "Did you see planes get shot down?" I says, I know we shot planes down, but I'm inside a mountain. I can't see nothing, you know. But yeah, this island we'd get liberty on this island. and we'd go ashore in sometimes there'd be landing craft that take us ashore, you know, and we'd get 2 beers. There'd be an officer and a crew, and we get 2 beers. Now, 2 beers is not enough for grown men, you know. So this one day on Ulysses, we went ashore. The officer says, carry the beer, put it in a certain spot, and we'll pass it on. So me and my buddy, his name was Kushner. He was a big guy. He was about a foot taller than me, but we were good buddies. We took a case and we buried it under a palm tree or coconut tree. I don't know what kind it was, but we buried it in the sand. Then we went in line, got our 2 beers. I guess they didn't miss that case, but anyway, we went back to get the case, and it was gone. And right above us, there's 2 chiefs, both from our ship. Chief Morris, he was the gunner, and Chief Sappington, he was the boatswain mate in charge of 6th Division. Morris hollered on, "Hey, Weigand." I said, "Yeah, you want a couple cold beers or you want your case?" I said, "We'll take a couple cold ones," because if we just wanted the case, they'd put us on report. So we took a couple cold ones. Then we went over and watched Bob Feller. Bob Feller was on our ship. Bob Feller was a great pitcher, and he was a chief. He was a chief gunner's mate, and he was on a 40 millimeters, and he got a team together, and they went to play baseball on on Ulysses, but he didn't pitch. You know, he wasn't allowed to pitch, and a lot of times, even when we was up Iceland, we played basketball in Iceland, and we had team competition, and our 6th Division, we won the ship's division, you know, and I was on that basketball team. And then we had softball teams that, like in Ulysses, we go play softball, get up a team and maybe play another division, play softball, you know. So it wasn't all, you know, you got your time off and, you know, and...
Did you have any experience with civilians in the Pacific, or did you not kind of interact with them much?
What?
Did you have any experiences with people like civilians in the Pacific, or did you not see them much?
I didn't. You know, I only saw one Jap. Mm-hmm. We took on this Jap. I don't know where from, but I was aft, and they brought him aboard and took him down the brig, and I saw him. That's the only Jap I ever saw.
Who were the men in your turret? How many men were in your gun mount?
Well, in our the 5-inch 38 mount, you had a mount captain. He was up on a platform, and they had a hatch above him. He's the mount captain. You had 2 guns. You had a shellman, a potterman, and a caseman. 3 guns. Then in between here, you had a fuse setter and a sight setter. Now on this side was a trainer, and this side was a pointer. Now the pointer and the setter, they had like wheels. The trainer would turn it, he could turn the mount any way, you know? And the pointer could elevate the guns like that. Now when you, say you went to general quarters, the mount captain would get orders from up above, fire control. There'd be a little box, that was called fire control. They'd holler down, they'd phone down to mount captain it would say, have your pointer, trainer, sight setter, and fuse setter match zeros and go on automatic. Well, the trainer and pointer, they all would get them wheels and they'd be zeros meet, and they'd put in automatic. That means fire control had control of our mount. And he had control of 2, 4, and 6. Mount 2, Mount 4, Mount 6, and then Mount 8 and 10 had another fire control. Now, we, as a shellman, let me start. They say stand by. That means the potter comes up out of the floor and has a sleeve on it because protecting the round thing, you know. Now they say stand by. That meant for him to take that off and put it in the gun. When they'd say commence firing, like I was a shellman, I'd take a shell out, put it in, ram it, and it would go off. Now when it ejected the projectile, the powder is a brass carton, like a bullet, you know. That would come out, and if the guns were like this, they'd go out and shoot right out the door. But if the guns were like this, they'd come down and hit the pit. That's when the powderman, what I say was, you got the shellman, the powderman, and the caseman. Caseman, I think. But if I were shooting like this, he'd reach in and get that powder and throw it out a little window, you know. And now the shells, they come up like this. When I take one out, one would shoot up here, and this empty one would go down and get filled up like that, you know. When you take one out, one's coming up. The powder underneath was called the upper handling room. Now, when he'd say commence firing, we'd keep shooting till he said cease fire, you know. Now, the powderman, the first one, have the guard on, and after that, there's no guard. And if it's continuous fire, as soon as that shell would go past, there would be like a spade, I think, would come out, and the gun captain would hit a lever, and that thing would go down. Then the powder, you know, the powder wouldn't go, it would stop there, you know. And we shot fast. I mean, I can't think of how many we shot in a minute, 10, 12, 15, something like that. But when it was continuous fire, everybody had their job to do, you know, the mount captain, gun captain, all he does was hit that paddle. And the powderman put his, he kept putting powder in. He didn't look around or nothing. When that shell went down and that peg came down, he put the powder in. And the shellman would put in, you know. Now we're shooting at planes. The nose of that shell has a sight setting, you know. Now, up above and down below, they know the speed of the plane, the direction, and all that, you know. Well, that would, when they put the shell in the upper handling room, coming up, it would set at what speed, what that had to go off. Now, when it's shot, the shell goes around like that and out, and that starts a powder train in that little cone. Now, if it say it's set for 10 seconds, it burns for 10 seconds, then it explodes. Okay? Now, we bombarded. We had different kind of shells. They were called armor piercing. They would explode on contact, you know. Like when we bombed that, we shooting that island, it was not continuous fire, but we didn't shoot as fast, you know. It just, the mount captain would be in charge. He'd say, powderman load, you know, and we'd shoot one at a time. They were armor piercing. They went off when they aimed. And during the end of the war, we got shells on that said, they told us, we never fired, they told us that when that shell went up in the air, it would find the airplane. I don't know how I did, but we never fired any of them. But we had them aboard. And then one time we was taking on ammunition. I forget where it was. And our shells weighed 54 pounds, and they were about that big, 2 foot. And when the shells took on ammunition, they come in boxes, 2 in a box. The guy comes down, hey, Weigand, come on up, Bob, come on. Come on up on deck, I want to show you something. What? Come on up on deck. I went up, and there's these boxes. Christie Parks work, McKeesport. And that's where I'm from, McKeesport, I got down it. But they made the shells in Christie Park. But they just made the shells, and they shipped them out to put powder in, but that's where the shells were made. And he says, look at that, your hometown. Yeah, what the hell can I do about it,
Do you know if your mount was credited with downing any aircraft?
Pardon me?
Do you know if your mount was credited for downing any aircraft?
Well, I don't know. We shot, but, you got 20, if it's on a port side, you got 20 guns shooting, and if a plane goes down, who's going to say which shell hit it,
Do you remember the men that served in the gun mount with you?
Pardon me?
Do you remember the men that served in the gun mount with you? Were you good friends with them?
Oh yeah, I was friends with a lot of guys. You meet some people that you automatically, are friends, but then some other ones, you just don't get along. I got along with like Kushner. He was when I was second class, he was third class, and he was in Mount 4, because 6th Division had the 3 mounts, 2, 4, and 6. Then there was a guy, the 16-inch, sometimes would stand watch for us, Like one time, they were standing watch for us. We was in hostile waters, but we wasn't at general quarters. But they had crews from 16-inch guns that come over and relieve us in the mount and the upper handling room. Now, I didn't tell you about the mount, how many people was in the mount, And the upper handling room had about 12 or 15 men. And they would put the powder in and the shells, And then you had your lower handling room that was down below decks, that where the ammunition was stored. If the upper handling room was run out of ammo, they'd call down the low handling room and they'd send up more, powder or shells. But altogether, it was 14 in the mount and about approximately 30 guys in one mount, mount 2, and
Do you know how many men there were in the 16-inch turrets? Were they more automated?
No, I don't really know how many men were in the 16 gun.
Okay.
But they were loaded automatically, like them shells weighed 200 pounds. You can't pick them up and put them in. And they had all kind of, their powder was bags, and everything was on hydraulic stuff, And when they shoot, when a 16-inch would shoot broadside, that would mean all 9 guns shooting one side. When they shot, that damn ship went like this, and then come back up. Then if we was bombarding a place, each mount and each gun, they would shoot 1 gun at a time in a turret, has 3 guns. They'd shoot 1 at a time, instead of broadside. And I'll tell you, when they shot broadside, that damn old ship went whoa.
What were some of the places you provided shore bombardment? Do you remember?
The what?
What were some of the places you provided shore bombardment?
What other places I went ashore?
No, when the Alabama provided fire support for bombarding the shore.
I don't understand you, Harold.
That's all right.
We came to, maybe this time, in January 45, we come back to the States. We went to Bremerton Navy Yard, and we went in dry dock. Now that's another thing, dry dock, the ship goes in this dock, then they let the water out, and there's big wooden things that the ship rests on, and one of the things that they had to do was scrape the bottoms, you know, and all that, and repaint it, and then I guess we got an overhaul job, you know. Now the Alabama, from the time it was commissioned, so when the war was over, the ship traveled enough miles to go around the world 8 times. Now that's a lot of traveling, you know. So, like in January, we come and they, like I say, dry dock and the overhaul job, and it had 4 screws on. The screws and propeller, and them damn thing is big, you know. We had 4 of them, you know, and we had Liberty, and while I was in one of the groups to go on leave, first leave. I was on leave in January for 30 days. Then, well, when this the other went on, you know, and when you're in dry dock, you can't use the head because, you know, you don't go out in the ocean, you know, you're in dry dock. And we had to go ashore where they had the head, you know. We go there and take showers and wash our clothes and stuff like that. Like aboard ship, you had a big laundry bag and a big pin with a number on it in 6th Division. And I don't know, it was once a week, you'd fill your bag up with dirty clothes, you know, like your underwear, socks, shirts, pants. We had dungaree. We wore dungarees mostly aboard ship. The only time you put whites on is when you're going in a port or, you know, inspection, and you'd turn them bags in, they'd go down laundry, and they'd come back clean, you know. I think once a week we sent our laundry down, you know. But like I say, aboard ship, and your whites, you had whites. You washed them yourself because you put them in a bag. When they come back, they're all wrinkled up. And we had blues, dress blues, but they should dry clean. You know, you only wore them when you went ashore, you know, on Liberty here, and on inspections. And like when we went through the canal, we had to put our whites on and stand above deck going through, you know. I think in this picture, we're all lined up going in there. It's hard to see, but we're lined up going in there, you know.
Did you have any close calls during the war when you were almost hurt or killed?
But I can't.
Did you have any close calls where you were almost hurt or killed?
Well, just a time in Tokyo Bay, and another time aboard ship. It was a foggy day. You couldn't see very much, you know. And me and my couple of buddies, we used to go up, and there used to be a panel and a shield there that would bring up warm air from down below. And it was muggy down below, so we went up there and was just, you know, and nobody was on watch because you couldn't see, you know. And we're standing there, and all of a sudden we look up, and Christ, there's an airplane. It was a Japanese bomber, Betty. And its bomb base was, doors were open. And we look up, holy shit. So we Montu overhang was there, 16-inch gun, you know, they had an overhang. We ducked under there. We thought he dropped the bomb. But then after we got under there, general quarters went. Well, we was right close by our vine, you know. But after 5 minutes, they relieved general quarters. Well, what must have happened? He must have bombed someplace, and in this heavy weather got lost. And our radar couldn't pick him up on account of the weather because he was flying so low, you know. So, but that wasn't a close call. That was just I don't know what the hell to call it, but it was just something, you know, that that's about all. I didn't have no close call. We was under attack, and we was all at general quarters, and we were shooting at a plane coming in the port side. We were shooting at it, and the plane went aft 180 degrees. Well, our guns can't shoot down that, so we ceased fire, and the starboard side picked them up, and they shot, but Mount 5 shot right into Mount 9, right in the back, right? Now, they should have shot because when it's 180 degrees, there's some kind of machinery on there that stop. If they're loaded, they won't shoot. Same as our guns. We can shoot from 0 to 180, but 0, they won't go off. And same as starboard side, 180 up to 316 0, they shouldn't go off, but they went off. And they killed about 4 or 5 in the mount, and I think a couple in the upper handling room, because we buried them at sea. But after that, about 2 days later, we got this gunner's mates, we got I noticed where the fuel sighter and sight setter sit inside that, here's the 2 shells and the guns. There was some kind of machinery in there that they think that on that mount they tripped that, and that's why the guns went off. And we had to cover that all up. All the mounts had to cover that up. Now I don't know if that was the reason or not, but when I was down the reunion in April, I got friends with Owen. I can't think of his name, but he was a buyer for the whole park, and he told me that somebody wrote a book about that, you know. And I says, who? He says, I don't know. I told him I'd like to get it. He said, well, talk to Jared. That's the guy that interviewed me, Jared. And I asked Jared, I said, did you write the book about the firing? He says, yeah. I said, I'd like to have it, you know. He said, I'll send it to you. And he took a picture of me and my son. He said, I'll send you a picture, you know. Well, he sent it to me. I got it here, you know. And he sent me a disc that for the interview, and he said he had to tape it a couple times, and it won't work on my DVD. But he sent me this, and I got to call him and tell him it don't work. Maybe he'll send me another one. But you can read this if you want, you know. But I didn't even read it all. It's so goddamn long. I have a hard time reading it.
When that happened, when number 9 turret fired into number 5, did you feel it? Did you know that happened?
No, I didn't see it. I was on the phones then. I was the mount captain then, and I could hear a lot of chatter on the phones, you know, talking this, and I thought we got hit, you know. But then it turned out that they said the one mount shot the other mount, and then we had a gunner's mate had to go over there, and they took turns. We took turns going over cleaning up, and we had them guns operating before we was going back to Pearl Harbor. We had them guns operating before we got to Pearl Harbor. But when we got to Pearl Harbor, I don't know if they put a new mount in or they did the whole job. But we just temporary. We could fire them guns.
I know Alabama got pretty lucky with not being damaged very much. Was there any time where you were hit by bombs or by shells?
Well, I think we never got hit. we was never really like I say, we have 9 stars on our ribbon, and we never was in real trouble, only in the typhoon. And I'll tell you about at sea. It's not maybe in your thing, but refueling at sea. Now, when we went on a mission, the ships had to be at least 75% loaded, you know. If we got below 75, we'd pull back and refuel. Now, refueling is a hell of a thing at sea. Battleships go in, and the oiler comes alongside, and they shoot over, and they send lines over, little ones and big ones, and they hook up forward and aft, and then they send up hoses, and I think they're on they call it a saddle. When it's up in the air, it's on a saddle. They'd go from the oiler over the ship, they'd hook up, and they'd refuel. Now, where they hooked up forward and aft, there would be a sailor with an axe. And if GQ went, his job was to cut everything off, because we were going to get the hell out of there, you know. But now, we're refueling. Now, a destroyer might pull up alongside us, and we refuel them. And maybe a destroyer would pull alongside the oiler on the other side, and they'd refuel, you know. But there'd be 4 or 5 ships refueling at the same time. And it didn't take long. Once the refueling is done, capacity, we go back in whatever we was going to do. Now, here's a story about, I was gunner's mate 2nd class, and a buddy of mine from, I forget what division he was in, we were buddies, and aboard ship, they put out a letter once a week, you know, about what we're doing, ranks, schools to go to, and there was opening for gunner's mate 2nd class to go to school in San Diego. So we both signed up for that, you know. And I didn't get it, he got it, you know. Well, he got it, and they put him on the oiler, you know. He was going back to Pearl Harbor, I guess, to go to San Diego. And they put him on the oiler. A few days later, we're refueling again, and there he is waving. I don't wave, go ahead, San Diego. You're on the oiler, if a submarine finds you, you ain't going nowhere. But at the time, it seemed funny, you know, he was still there. And I was glad I didn't make to go to San Diego.
Was Alabama involved in fighting any other enemy ships?
Pardon me?
Was Alabama involved in fighting any enemy ships?
Other ships, no. We never had no sea battles, no.
Did your task force encounter any kamikazes? Did your task force ever encounter any kamikazes?
I don't think. Certainly that typhoon. And one time, I don't know what, it was a ship. When they're out there, they maneuvering, and one ship rammed into the Washington. It was a battleship, but the other one was this ship rammed into I think the stern part. They must have got their signals mixed, you know. But we was never in any trouble. No, not really. Just when planes attacked, you know.
Yeah, the Japanese suicide planes. Did they ever?
I never saw them. Though. I seen them on, you know, but we shot at them, but I never saw none, you know.
Did any of the other ships get hit? Do you know?
I don't recall.
Okay.
It probably was, but I
what were What was it like operating in a task force with the carriers and other battleships?
Did I get what?
What was it like operating with other ships, with carriers and battleships?
You always operated with other ships. Like a task force is comprised of so many ships, and we went out. You had maybe two task force, in doing that, But
Do any stories stand out in your mind about ships you escorted?
pardon me.
Do you have any stories that stand out in your mind about ships you frequently escorted?
Mind about ships.
Okay. Did you have any nicknames for Alabama? Did Alabama have any nicknames?
Nickname,
Yeah.
Mighty A. It's called the Mighty A. South Dakota battleship was called the Shitty Dick. That was our sister ship. When two ships get built together, they call them sister ship. And that's, South Dakota was a sister ship to the Alabama. We called her the Shitty Dick. I don't know. They called us a name too, but I can't remember what they called. They didn't call us the Mighty A. They called us something else, but I really don't remember.
Did you ever meet the captain?
Oh yeah.
What about Rear Admiral?
I met the captain. I'll tell you how I met the captain.
Okay.
The war's over, and we're in Pearl Harbor, and we got liberty. I got liberty with my buddies, and that's it. We got drunk. We're going back to the ship. We're knocking over garbage cans on the sidewalk. Shore Patrol grabbed us and pick them up. The hell with that garbage can. They took us to the brig of the shore. So, I don't know, next day or that night, the captain of the brig ashore told the captain of our ship that he won't press charges, and this captain can press charges if he wants to, So, we didn't get charged for nothing. But I did get charged. We was in Bremerton Navy Yard getting that overhaul job. And when you got liberty, you went to this town and we bought whiskey in a store. They didn't sell whiskey in the bars. So we'd buy bottles, and you had to show your ID card. Well, we didn't care. So we knew that we was going to pull out on Wednesday. So this is Monday when we have liberty. So that meant we don't get no more liberty. Only one more liberty is Tuesday. So from that Bremerton, we had to get ferry boat to Seattle. It was about an hour drive, I guess. Yeah, an hour. And my buddy said they're going to stay over and come back Wednesday because there's no more liberty, Not me. I just made second class. I don't want to lose my rank. Well, the closer we got to Seattle and the more I drank, I stayed over, So Wednesday, we paddled around Seattle, do things. We come back to ship Wednesday. When you come aboard ship, you have to salute the flag aft, then you have to ask permission to come aboard. Permission to come aboard as an officer on duty. We reported AOL, so he calls the master at arms. The master at arms comes down, take us and books us, take us to the brig. And when you come back, they had boxes, like 6th Division. You put your ID card in the box, A lot of our buddies, they reported and just put their thing back. They didn't tell them they were AOL. And they got away with it. Anyway, we had captain's mass, and I went before the captain. And He says, what's your excuse, Weigand, for staying over? I said, Captain, I got drunk and I just stayed over. Okay. 7 days in the brig. Okay. My buddy Kushner, he went, same thing. He got 30 hours extra duty down the galley. Okay. So we pull out Wednesday. I go in the brig, and there was so many in the brig, it was full. They had another compartment where they kept guys, you know. So the brig's a funny time because the Marines watch you. You know, I had Marines aboard. So the Marines would take you to eat, take you to the head. When you went to the head, when you went into the toilet, Christ all thing, cigarettes coming back at you. There wasn't a lot of smoke in the brig, you know, cigarettes, you know. So, but the 6th day, we go to the head, and they frisk you. They know cigarettes is coming in. And we're back in the brig, and this guy, he takes his shoes off. He got cigarettes in his goddamn shoes, and he's smoking. This Marine comes over, he says, I smell smoke, and I knew the Marine, you know. I said, now you done it. He said, oh, tell me, Weigand, I know. You better put it out. So he left. They start smoking again. He come back. He said, come on, guys, for Christ's sake, you know. So I got mad because I was getting out the next day. And I spoke up. I said, hey, cut smoking them goddamn cigarettes because I'm getting out here tomorrow and I don't want to spend more time in here. So they quit smoking and I got out. Next day we pulled in Pearl Harbor. I had to leave. I'm going on leaving Cushion's down the galley. I said, so long, Cush. He was still doing his 30 hours extra duty. And I had to leave. And we was only in there 2 days, so I had leaving and the other section got leave. But third section didn't get no leave. But that was when I was in the brig. Yeah.
Did you ever see Rear Admiral Edward Hanson? That was his. Alabama was Rear Admiral Edward Hanson's ship, flagship for a while. Did you ever see him?
The what ship did I see?
Did you ever see the Rear Admiral? It was his flagship. Alabama was.
No.
What about the explorer Richard Byrd? He was with Alabama when you were shelling Honshu in Japan in 1945.
I didn't understand you, Harold.
When Alabama was shelling the Japanese home islands, there was a man named Richard Byrd on the ship. Did you ever meet him?
No.
Okay. When the war was over and it was announced that the war is over, what was the crew's reaction?
When the war was over?
Yeah.
I was glad. We were all glad. We couldn't wait to get out. You know, you had to go out by points. Like I say, your age counted so much, your sea duty counted so much, and your time in the service counted so much. And when we was in Tokyo Bay, and they come out with that, I had enough points to get out, you know, but I couldn't get discharged in Tokyo Bay, you know. I had to wait till we come back to the States. And I got discharged. And Kushner, my buddy, we got discharged at the same time, you know. And we went to Sampson, New York, and you get a physical, and you go through all kind of stuff before you get discharged. You know, I said that before.
When you were bringing the 700-800 people back to San Francisco as Operation Magic Carpet, did the ship feel crowded?
Oh yeah, they were sleeping all over the place. Down a galley, on the tables, on the floor, in hammocks, and there was a guy from McKeesport I met. He was in the Seabees, and he was getting discharged, and he was going back to Pearl Harbor, and he slept down the galley. The galley had tables like along the bulkheads, and they had seats, and they were sleeping on them. And you know, they were sleeping all over the place. But we took a lot of stuff off that we didn't use, you know, that made room for them.
Did they get along well with the crew?
Oh yeah. We didn't have no trouble. I didn't have no trouble.
Okay. When you got back to the States and you were discharged from the Navy, did you feel sad to leave the ship behind?
Yeah, I was proud. I was glad it was over. And let me tell you something about. They call us a great generation now, you know. But when we got discharged, guys like me, we were just glad to get home and get back to work. Now, when I was aboard ship yet, we was coming back, I asked the ensign in our division, I told him, I'll stay a year in the peacetime Navy, but I don't want no more. He says, I'll find out for you. He come back and he says, you have to re-enlist for 6 years. I says, goodbye. I says, I got a job at home. And 99% of the guys that come out of the service, that was their goal. They were either going to go to college, go back to work, or whatever they do. You know, I worked at Menzie Dairy. I had a job. The job was waiting for me, you know. And when you got discharged, they had, I think they called it the 50-20 club. You got $20 a week, I think, for 50 weeks, you know. And I got discharged November 25th. I stayed off 2 weeks. I didn't even sign up for the thing. I went back to work. And my first paycheck, I got $75. And Christ, when I left, I was making 31. So, you know, I'm making a lot of money, you know. And here's another thing about the great generation. When I was working, when the war started, they didn't take income tax out of your pay. We got paid by cash. It would be an envelope and be cash. They took Social Security out, but they didn't take income tax. And every January and July, we had to pay our income tax. Well, July, I went in the Navy. I didn't pay, you know. About 6 months after I got out, I get a letter from the government. I owed so much for taxes for 1942, January and July. It was like something, $20 or something. But I had to pay it. And I says, I'll be go to hell. I'm overseas fighting the goddamn war, and here you want $20 from me, you know. But it was, I paid it. You know, but it just seemed funny. 3.5 years, you know, you think they'd forget about it. No.
Did you keep up with the ship and the crew you knew after the war was over, or did you just kind
Not really, but I read about when the battleships were obsolete, and they were going to dismantle them and use the iron to make domestic things, you know, like frying pans and stuff like that. And Governor Wallace was the governor of Alabama, and he wanted this ship. And the government said they'd give it to him, but they'd have to take it out. So school children and people in Alabama raised $1 million, over $1 million. And they brought the Alabama from Bremerton Navy Yard through the Panama Canal and up to Mobile Bay to where it berthed in Mobile, Alabama. And it cost $1 million. I think it was about 4 or 5 tugboats. The ship itself couldn't move because everything was done, you know. The tugboats pushed it through the canal, pushed it all the way to the berth where it is now. And they made a park. They've got about 8 acres down there. And there's a submarine down there and a PT boat that you can see, you know. And outside on the park grounds, they got memorials for Korean War, Vietnam War. They got tanks, they got airplanes, they got ships, and they have a building right when you go up the Bangway on the right. They got a building, and that's full of military stuff, you know. There's a lot to see down there. But I think to see the stuff out in the ground don't cost nothing, but to get on the Alabama, I think they charge $8. You have to. There's a souvenir shop, and then there's a door you can go out and go up. I think it costs $8 to go, but like I'm a member of the Crewmen's Association, we didn't have to pay nothing, you know, just go right through. when this last time I went, yeah. Oh, you board ship, you shoot the flag, and you ask permission to come aboard, and there was sailors lined up, about 3 on each side, and the officer of deck was there. So I got down, and I walking through, they put their guns up, and I walked. Said, permission to come aboard, sir. He says, you're a plank owner, aren't you? I says, yes. He says, you don't need permission. This is your ship, you know. But these guys are all volunteers. They weren't real servicemen, but some of them might have served in it, because that lieutenant, he had a Navy uniform on, but he come out of the Army as a lieutenant, you know. But he took that lieutenant uniform, and he volunteers to do stuff like that, you know. And they have all kind of sailors, and they have girls in Navy uniforms that do things, you know. They're all volunteers. It's good, you know.
Well, that was all the questions I had. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah. As being on the Alabama for 3.5 years, I earned what's called the Blue Nose. That's for crossing the Arctic Circle. And I become a shellback. That's when you cross the equator. Now, to become a shellback, you have to take initiation. And what they do, if you're a shellback, the shellbacks, they build a pool on the after deck, like a swim pool, and then you get subpoenaed. Like I have a subpoena. It says I'm subpoenaed for cheating in a chow line, getting up late, shirking duty. But I didn't have to go in a pool. They initiated me, but I forget what they did to me. But Bob Feller was aboard ship. He was that great pitcher for Cleveland. But they dumped him in. He dumped him in the thing. So that means I'm a shellback. And if ever you go through that again, you can give other people the initiation, you know. And they paint you up, and they grease you up, and they do all kind of stuff, you know, that when you're subpoenaed, you know. And everybody gets a subpoena that's not a shellback.
Do you want a drink?
And then I'm the Blue Nose, shellback, cross the date line. I forget what that is, but when you cross the date line, you get something. And one of our missions, we crossed that date line about 8 times. We'd go back, you know. They said we crossed the date line about eight different times. I'm going to show you this stuff. And I'm going to give you some stuff too. And I'll do that right now. Hold on a minute. Ooh. Now here's a hat for you.
Thanks.
I'm gonna give you that. Now, I'll tell you. Here's your ID card.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, let me tell you a story about. I should have told you about that. A yeoman. He's like a secretary, but they call it yeoman. You get good with a yeoman, and he'll make you a second one, you know. Now, this is a second one. Now, when you're in Bremerton Navy Yard, and you're not on Liberty, you can go on Liberty, you go ashore, you have your uniform in a bag, like you're going to take a shower and shave. You go in ahead, you dress up, you go out the gate, you got a card, and you're on liberty. When you come back, you got your card, you go in the head, take your whites off, put your working uniform on, go back on ship. Nobody misses you. But that's why it was good to get the yeoman. Now here's the three things that I got. Now this is a Jap flag that guy gave me. Maybe you can read. I can't read them, but one of them's crossing the date line. Blue nose, shellback, and dragon. I think this one here is the date line.
Golden Dragon.
Dragon, man. And here's the thing about the Alabama. Yeah, dragon. That's all the medals that we earned. Now here's a book I'm going to give you that it tells you all about the Alabama.